down to doing this training. This is not about teaching you how to drive. If you don't know how to do that, I can't really help you at this point in your life. Okay? Worst part about doing this in a group in front of you guys is 99.99% of you are male. We are the dumber of the species. Okay? And I would assume I could put at least my house down in Vegas that none of you have never done anything stupid while you're driving, right? Nobody drag races back on these country roads when you're younger, right? None of you sped to get here today. Okay, if you sit there and listen to me say that I didn't speed on the way down here from Chicago or DeKalb, I'd be lying. As soon as I got on the highway, my cruise was set at 77. Okay, I am not a perfect human being. None of us are. But I feel like I'm in church because everybody went to the back first, okay? Where I'm going with this is how do we eliminate some distractions when we can? That's the goal of this, okay? All of us have seen it. As a matter of fact, I came home from Kansas last week. Just by chance, we sitting next to a cop and we started talking about stuff. We started talking about the speeding. Because the first thing I noticed, because I really never stopped traveling. The roads were empty, people were doing 100 miles an hour, and nobody's getting pulled over. And he's like, yeah. He goes, they actually told them to let them go. The only calls that they were responding to were something that's happened, which is sort of screwed up, you know? It's like, all right, let's just wait until somebody gets robbed or calls it in before we actually see it happen. And he goes, it's still like that. And you think about it, you know how many people pass me at 77 miles an hour like I was sitting still today? I bet you it happened to you. So the whole point is, in this captive that your company belongs to, the majority of all the accidents and claims that are costing money are vehicle accidents and strains and sprains. And the goal to this is when you look at these numbers, vehicle accidents are the leading cause of death in the industry. That includes you. We're not talking about truck drivers, semi-trucks. Those numbers are about probably 10% of the vehicle accidents on the road today. The reason everybody automatically goes to that is, what do you think happens if you have a semi-truck jackknife on 39 or 74? What happens? Everything's blocked. So it makes the news. And that's what the news is going to pick up on, not all the other accidents. Heck, when that last snowstorm came through here, I'm going from Illinois, I'm going out to Cedar Rapids, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe there's not a bunch of people in the ditch. As soon as I got to the Iowa border, I swear to God, like every 3 miles, there's a car. I'm like, what the hell happened? But you don't hear about those, you hear about the semi-trucks. This is also including your delivery drivers, your FedEx drivers, all these things. How many of you, by the way, have teenagers at home driving? Nobody screws around here? Thank you for being honest. Besides suicide, it's the next leading cause of death in teenagers. Okay? Think about when you got your license, how stupid we were. All I wanted to do was drive. I wanted to go from point A to point B. And now, what do we have? What do your kids grow up with? You got grandparents that can't put this damn thing down. And so this is where, how many distractions do they have? That's why it's such a leading cause. Now construction actually, that was 3 a couple of years ago. It's jumped back up to number 2. I don't know why. Can't give you that answer. But on average, and this country government takes a long time to get these numbers together. But you're talking at least 100 people who are going to die today. And how many of you are going to get injured? Now look, you know, you sit there and Gary talked about strains and sprains and things of that nature. Yeah, you get hurt. You get hurt in a vehicle accident. You get sued. You get sued, whatever you want. I don't care. You get as much money as you can get. I don't care. But if you're paraplegic because of that accident, tell me what all the money in the world is going to buy you. Nothing. I'd much rather be freaking broke to be able to walk than to sit there and be in a wheelchair. And the only thing that I got going for me is I have no feeling from the neck down, so I don't feel myself crapping myself. These are things is how you want to live as you get older. And I would assume most of us don't move like we did when we were 20 years old, right? I'm 56, I feel like I'm 80. I didn't do this for a living all my life. And I was stupid at a lot of things that I did younger. So these are how do we eliminate some of these things? We already talked about the distractions. Now, when it comes down to cell phones, look, majority of the time, once I get on the highway, I put the cruise on. I don't know what you guys do, but how many of you have been going down the highway, you're driving somewhere, you got the cruise on, and somebody passes you like a bat out of hell. You haven't done anything. Next thing you know, you're passing them again. And all of a sudden, they're passing you. What do you think's going on when that game comes up? They're probably on their phone, right? Because if they slow down to 70 miles an hour, that means they can sit there and text better, right? How many of you have texted and driven? Thank you. Again, for whoever raised your hand, the rest of you go to confession. I'm not going to buy it. I am not a perfect human being, and I'm not going to tell you you can't use these things. That is not my point. But do you use it in rush hour traffic in the city of Chicago or driving through the downtown area of Peoria compared to being on 74 and you're in the middle of nowhere and nobody's around you? When are you going to pick that phone up? That's what we got to think about. That's what I want you to think about. And think about it. How many of you have driven while you're driving using your phone and you just a split second look down? The next thing you know, you're going in the middle of the road or in the lanes or going off the shoulder. So these are things I want you to try to eliminate. Something else? If you can eliminate backing up, that's the key. Rear end, these two types of accidents are preventable. Okay, now rear end accidents, that's a whole different story for some situations. Because underneath every one of your side panel doors, I don't know if you've ever looked really close, it says, "Hi, Sue. We have enough money to put our names on the side of a vehicle." You don't think people think that way? You don't think there's, heck, Coca-Cola made national news probably 15 years ago because people would get in front of their trucks, slam on the brakes, they get rear-ended. Because Coca-Cola's got a lot of money. And the point to all this is, again, people are looking for something. We are talking about it today while we're out in, what was the place we were at? Rivian? It's like, we're looking at things that there's something wrong with the client, not you guys, but I'm looking at if something goes wrong, they're going to blame you. You know that. This is the way it is nowadays. Who's going to point fingers and what's going to happen? Rear end collisions, that comes down to us paying attention. Backing, that's the whole other issue. I don't know, again, maybe it's just me getting older. If I'm going to pull into a parking spot, I'm going to want to pull through too, so once I leave, I go straight out. I don't like backing anymore. Now, backup cameras are awesome. I wish I had that when I had driver's ed. Okay? Heck, when I got my license, you didn't have to wear a seatbelt. So, and based on this crowd here, I'm going to say, take an educated guess, more than half of us didn't have to do that, correct? So, these are things we've got to think about. Stationary objects, you guys don't have to worry about that. You do have to worry about deer. That's another big one. Fortunately, I've never hit one. I don't know if any of you have. You're shaking your head like yes. It's not probably a good day. Hopefully it's not like Tommy Boy and it's going through the windshield. But again, all these things come into play. Heck, I think it was Barrington, Illinois. They hired Ted Nugent a couple years ago and a bunch of professional hunters to start cutting down the herd because they're having so many deer accidents. And usually what happens, nobody says anything until somebody dies. That's a sad reality. Now again, these are things I'm not expecting to be perfect. Come to work well rested. Look, any of you who've ever had children, do you have a good night's sleep every day? No. And there's people out there that have 2 or 3 jobs, so sleep sometimes is overrated. Okay? It would be nice. Get all your paperwork together. Okay? All these things come into play. Look, the great thing is about phones in our vehicles, we have a lot of GPS systems on there, so we can stop, punch all this stuff in and go. But how many of you remember you would print up a Google map and try to look at it while you're driving at the same time? Okay? Or you're a service tech, and you're in a van or a pickup truck by yourself, and you're going from point A to point 3 trying to get work orders together. When do we do that? Well, the right time is when we're doing 80 miles an hour, right? So these are things I want you to think about. So I got into the habit of walking around the car, making sure all the mirrors are set before I leave that parking lot. Are they perfect when I get on the highway sometimes? No. And I still got to make adjustments. But 90+% of it is done. Now, looking outside at the road, we all get distracted when you see something. Here, how many of you have you're driving and you sit there and do this move? Hey kids, look at the deer. Why are you looking back at your kids? They're not going anywhere. Because right now, well, the rut's over. But before that, you had the dumber of the species chasing the female across the road, right? So whereas one, there's a second. In a couple of months, you're going to be dealing with springtime. So mom's going to cross that street first, and then what's going to happen to Danny? Pay attention, because whereas one, there's another. And I'm jumping ahead on that section. The other part is, look, I don't know if any of you know where the James Byrne bottleneck is in Chicago, right downtown. But it's basically where Eisenhower and 294 meet, and it is on a good night at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's backed up. Well, if you're going on 294 northbound, at one time, there was a big billboard of a divorce attorney, female divorce attorney. And what do you think the majority of that billboard was? Come on, guys, think. You can say it, her boobs. Okay, and what do you think the dumber of the species was doing? And they were having rear end accidents left and right. Because right there, everything always comes to a bottleneck. They actually forced her to take it down. I don't care if you look at that stuff, but look at it like you're looking at the sun. You look away so you don't go blind. Okay? That's all I can say. And then eating. I'm not going to tell you not to eat while you're driving. We have all done it, correct? The problem is, and again, learning from experience. How many of you have pulled off a highway, you get McDonald's, and then you're going on to you're getting back on the 39 or 65 in Indiana or wherever you're going, but you're going through the bag as you're going onto the highway. I'm not saying I'm asking you to be perfect, but this is where what I've learned, and I'm not perfect. But the majority of the time I pull over as soon as I get my meal, I get everything out to where I know where it's at, and then I go. I'm not digging through the bag as I'm driving. And if I'm on vacation with the family, they're handing it to me. So I don't have to dig and I can pay attention. That's what I'm talking about, how do you eliminate some of the distractions. None of your trucks look like that, do they? Seatbelts. I was mid-30s when I started working for Gallagher. And seatbelts were not a law in Illinois yet. But once I started working for Gallagher, driving a company car, if I didn't wear a seatbelt and I got in an accident, I'm paying for the claim and I'm probably losing my job. So you got into a habit, and then they made it a law anyway. Look, most of us probably put them on without even thinking. It's a habit. But there's still people that don't wear their seatbelts. So please wear them. Look, all of us probably know of somebody that lived because they weren't wearing their seatbelts. Okay? Yes, it's pure luck. Majority of the time, you should have your seatbelt on. Most of you do not have to do vehicle inspections. Any of you driving a DOT registered truck? None of you? All right. Is that tire good or bad? You guys ever fill out inspection forms? Don't pencil with them. That's not a truck tire that everybody in the world knows their name. Everybody. care what rock you're living under. You gotta know this name of the company. For 2 years in a row, I go out there and find stuff like this. At a certain point, I just look at the guy, the supervisor, and I'm like, I don't get it. How do you explain if your driver gets into a vehicle accident because your tire blows in worst case scenario and kills a family of 4 at an intersection? You tell me how you're going to explain that in court of law. I've got it documented that you're not doing it. I'm not going to jail. So these are things that if you're ever going to do an inspection, do it.
There's a sheet where I handed out to you guys, a vehicle inspection form is included in there. If you need another one, I'll email it to you. Everyone should have my email address. But vehicle inspection form is on that, in that handout.
Are you guys driving your vehicles to and from home too? Yes, no?
Yes.
So this is where I don't know, I think you probably have to do something daily, but you may want to keep track of certain things. Stay alert, check your mirrors every 3 to 5 seconds. Now this is the difference between somebody that's been driving in a while and a teenager that just got their license. You get your license when you're 16, you're probably not looking at anything but just going forward. As we get older, we tend to check these things and we're not probably even thinking about it. You're probably just doing it just to, boom. The only time we stop doing it is when we get into a lull and the road doesn't change and you're driving forever, okay? And all of a sudden you don't even notice that somebody's coming up behind you at 100 miles an hour because you've been driving on the same road for 3 hours and you haven't seen anybody. So I get that, I understand that, but this is where, again, you should check your mirrors, know your blind spots. And guys, I'm not asking you, this is your thing. I would highly recommend whenever you're parking somewhere, especially as service guys, to put cones around the vehicles, okay? The whole point is I deal with all sorts of industries. And you would not believe how many clients I have that go to convenience stores, gas stations, park, and somebody hits their big semi-truck, I didn't see it. How the hell do you not see a semi-truck? But yet they're going to blame them. The whole point of the cones is to eliminate the liability. One of the other members, Winger Construction, mechanical, they go out. It was sort of cool. I got the picture somewhere on my computer. Their guys were eating at a barbecue joint that I had stopped at. And they were just in the parking lot. They put cones around their truck, just in the parking lot. They're not even doing work. Like, that's pretty cool. Look, it's the whole point is eliminating some type of liability. Signal early. The only thing that you can control is what's in front of you. You cannot control anything else. Okay, now, you can somewhat, depending on what kind of driver you are. But like when we're coming here today, Ray, this girl is in a hurry to go nowhere. She gets on my rear, and then she passes me. And she can't pass Ray because there's another vehicle there. So she gets back in front of me, so I just sort of left tack a little bit. But she's riding Ray. And I'm going, why don't you go around him? She's got all the room in the world to go around him, but she doesn't. And I'm going, wow, you're a nice guy, Ray, because I would have let my foot off the gas and slow down to 25 miles an hour. Go past me. If you're that much of a hurry, go around me. Okay? But, cushion safety. All of us have probably heard, if I'm driving somewhere, you see a car in front of you, you sit there and let them pass a sign or a bridge, and then you start counting. 1 1,000, 2 1,000. If my front of the vehicle gets to that sign or bridge before 4 1,000, you're driving too close. Now, I can guarantee you this, at 70 miles an hour, you're not going to make 2 by the time I get to that wall. I can guarantee it. What do you think is going to happen if you're driving a bigger truck and you give somebody this much room? You're going to cut in front of you. Plain and simple. Just think about the semi-truck driver. You guys have never cut off a semi-truck driver before, right? You've never cut off a combine going down the back roads. You've never cut off a school bus. And again, if you sit there and say you haven't done it, then go to confession. Because why do we do this? Because they're slower than us. And when you're not driving for work, we seem to drive like idiots. Because we're in a hurry. When we're driving for work, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. We tend to do this, no, we do over the speed limit, but we're probably going a little bit slower than normal. But when we're in our own vehicle and we're in a hurry, what are we doing? We're gunning it everywhere. So these are things that, how do you sit there, take a deep breath, and give that cushion of safety? Tomorrow you're going to have a snowstorm hitting this place. By me, I'm far enough north that based on where it goes, which angle, I may get a couple inches, I may get a foot. Here they're talking probably rain first and it's going to turn to ice. These are the days that I don't even like going to work because I know what's going to happen living close to Chicago. And the funny part to this is everybody that lives in a winter area, Chicago's included, first snow, everybody thinks I'm the only one that can drive in the snow. Just sort of like, I'm the only one that could use this, everybody else is an idiot, right? And just because you got a pick-em-up truck with four-wheel drive does not mean you drive any better than me on ice. Look ahead, 1 or 2, 3 blocks inside the city, quarter-mile ahead. I know Illinois passes zipper rule. Anybody hear about that? Everybody basically left lane is 3 miles. But when does everybody get over? At the last second, right? We cut people off, and this is where everybody gets jammed up and we slow down. Well, basically Illinois came with the zipper law where it's basically you're driving, we could do this, but you go. Everybody takes their turn, nobody gets pissed off and flips everybody off, okay? These are the things you gotta think about. But again, the other part with city blocks ahead, all of you guys have probably seen this. A FedEx driver double parked on a side street. You gotta go around. Or a pizza delivery guy. Or nobody sits there and does this while they're crossing the street, right? As much as I would like to say, take them out, they're out of the gene pool, we can't, okay? The whole point of this is, think about what's going on. You know what's going to happen if you're in a city. Look, I grew up in Chicago. You look both ways before you cross the street. Nobody does that anymore. So if you're going through a city area, boom, scan ahead, an escape plan. Now there's a couple parts to what I call an escape plan. For the service guys, anybody driving where you're going through neighborhoods or around the school district, if you gotta go past, if you gotta go to the school district to do work, that's one thing. But if you gotta drive past it just for work, do you want to avoid that altogether and maybe take an extra block or 2 away from that? It may take you an extra couple of minutes, but how many of you are going to see a bunch of little ones running in between cars? How do you explain that out if that something goes in the left field and you hit a kid because you didn't see them? And think about it. We have all seen, or probably some of our own kids, run out into the street, correct? So these are things that I would sit there. That's one. The other part is construction. How many of you love sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic because of construction? You take a different route. So it adds 5 extra minutes. Is it worth you having a heart attack or letting you breathe and go around? When I would go hunting in Indiana in Lafayette, the fastest way to get to my buddy's house was taking 65. Well, now it's 3 lanes all the way to Crown Point and then 2 again. But what do you think happens on 65? How many of you have ever driven 65? It's a racetrack. And all of a sudden you get behind one truck and next thing you know you're behind everybody and then everybody's going to fly past you at 100 miles an hour once that truck moves over. I would get on the old 65, I'd be on a 4-lane highway, nobody else on there, my crew set at 66, and I got there 20 minutes later than what I would normally do, but I'm not pissed off the world. How do you sit there and go from there? Now the other part too, the last part of the escape plan. Again, you know your area. In Chicago, once you start getting into the city, everything starts opening up. From 2 lanes to 3 lanes to 4 lanes sometimes. Stay in the fast lane or the slow lane. That's how I look at it. How many of you have ever driven on a highway somewhere and all of a sudden, maybe you're not paying attention or you are paying attention, and all of a sudden a vehicle in front of you swerves into the shoulder? Have any of you ever seen that? Well, why do you think that's happening? Because something happened in front of them. You're stuck in the middle lanes, you're SOL. Hope to God you catch it in time and you can brake fast enough, and the person behind you is paying attention, and they'll rear end you. So being stuck on this fast lane or slow lane, at least you have a shoulder to go into if something does go in the left field. If you're not in a hurry, stay in the middle lane. Does Peoria have any streets where you got a bunch of lights, one after another, and they all sort of turn green at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what happens when we try to time it just right? What happens if we're falling behind?
You hit every one.
You got it, right? Or any stop sign around here. All of a sudden you see this light, it's yellow, or it's green, and you're driving, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm not going to make it. Slow down a little bit. And all of a sudden you get closer. You get closer. You're like, oh crap, I'm going to make this. What do? We gun it. What happens? We're going through the red light. We're looking at the red light as we're right in the middle of the intersection. Now, in Indiana, I think that's legal. I think you get like 10 seconds to get through a red light. So, at least that's what I've learned driving through Indiana. So, sorry if everybody's growing up in Indiana. Sorry. Okay. How do we deal with that?
They don't have driver's ed there, I don't think.
Changing lanes, avoiding obstruction, merging. Anybody ever go to Phoenix? Phoenix is amusing to me because on the outside of Phoenix, the entire highway system around Phoenix is like 6 lanes. And most of it are people from Illinois. And so if I want to merge onto that off-ramp over there and I'm in the far lane over here, when do I go over? When do I get over and merge? Well, if I'm from Arizona or in Phoenix, I pull over at the very last second and I flip everybody off that's in my way to get to that turn off ramp. Because you are in my way. If you know you're going to have to merge, merge. The other thing that you got to think about it again, I've got to assume some of you have driven to Chicago. You get on the Eisenhower, the closer you get to the city, there's an off and on ramp every block. So let's say you're driving a big truck and you want to get off on whatever's after Cicero. And you decide that this guy's coming on the off-ramp, you pull over to be the nice person. But you got to get back over right away. What do you think's going to happen in that environment? So this is where you got to use your experience. Do I slow down and let this guy go? He's driving fast, let him go. Or do I speed up and get in front of him? All these things come into play when you're doing that because, again, in a perfect world, you can move back over and come back in. We don't live in this perfect world. So that's something to think about that when it comes down to merging. Backing. When you're backing somebody up, communication is key. What is the hand signal for stop, guys? That's it? All right. So, you did this, he did that, you did this. I don't give a crap if you use your middle finger. As long as you and I know what that means. What's this, guys? You're in construction. You should know what this is. Wow, we should keep these guys here all day. This is stop for a crane operator, right? This is emergency stop. Does this a stop or am I swatting at a beam? I don't know. The other part is if you're backing me up and I lose you in my mirror, what should I do? Stop. When I first started working for Gallagher, the majority of all my clients at that time were school districts. Cicero School District was one of them in the city of Chicago. They're right on the outskirts of Chicago, but I should say Chicago. Get to the school district office, be my contact. Did you hear about the fireman? I'm like, no. The chief was backing up a truck at the station and got killed, got crushed, because they weren't paying attention. These are firemen that train for emergencies on a regular basis, and they crushed him between the 2 bays. They had an I-beam between the 2 bay doors. What a way to go for a fireman.
Wow.
I'm not trying to make light of it. It just comes down to how does that happen? All these things come into play. Also, you want to hear them spotted. Okay, so don't have the music blaring, things of that nature. Deer season, pretty much over. But look, I look at it this way. Deer season is It could happen at any time, plain and simple, okay? There's no rhyme or reason to it. The damage that it causes people is unbelievable. If you ever look up near misses with deer accidents, I'll never forget this one guy, a motorcyclist, bunch of them driving through one of the state parks out west. The one guy had a camera, and this deer comes flying and jumps over the one guy in front of him, lives right over the top. I mean, holy crap. And this guy got lucky he didn't get hit at all. But these are things that can happen at any time. They usually happen during the rut when they're running all over the place because that's their time to breed. But the majority of the time, they're still going to be moving in the mornings, and they're still going to be moving in the evenings. Now, that's historic. But I've hunted for God knows how long, and you think I'm heading in at 10, 11 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm done sitting. And you're like, son of a, what are they doing out right now? How many of you have ever done that hunt? So these are things where it comes down to they're going to do what they want to do. Okay? But remember, again, I don't know what's the deer like. Are the deer good out here? Because I hunt on the other side of the state. So again, I would assume they're doing the same thing. This may be, when you see that sign right there, this may be where you want to put your phone down. The government doesn't do anything that it wants. It doesn't do anything that's going to cost them money. Okay? So if they put a sign up like that, that means so many accidents have happened in this stretch of highway. And I can't make this up. Like, you live out, if any of you live in a rural area where there are no stop signs at an intersection, any of you? So many people have to die at that intersection before they will put a stop sign up. So many more people have to die at that intersection before they will put lights up. There's statistics into this. Because it's more costly to pay for somebody to put a stop sign up than to just pay it off. We're worth more dead, we're worth less dead than we are alive. So it comes down to the equation. So this may be, do we put that phone down when we see those signs? The thing in this scenario, that picture up there, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a bar. I would assume not. We're leaving at the bar, it's 11 o'clock at night, and we're on our phone, of course, and it's dark. We're on the road just like that. And all of a sudden, at the last second, you see a deer right in front of you. In that scenario, what do you do? Let me add to that. There's a car coming the other way. What do you do? Good answer. Hit the deer may be the only option. Look, even if we're paying attention and everything's right, how many of you have ever seen fog where you can't see in front of your car? All these things come into play when it comes down to that, and based on that picture, that drops off. So what are you going to do? Run into a tree? How damaged are you going to be with that airbag going off and smacking you right in the face? All these things, and I don't want you taking a head-on collision if there's a car there. Look, in a perfect world, we stop in time. But we don't live in a perfect world. This is where paying attention comes into play. These things are, I don't know if anybody can even make these things. You ever see those? Those things are worthless. Okay? It's sort of like us calling the cops when we hear a car alarm going off in Walmart. You just walk by it, right? We don't even notice the noises anymore. Okay? This is one of my clients. That was a turkey, actually.
Big turkey.
Good turkey, huh? Look, again, we're going to be, look, we've had some mild winters the past couple years, in my opinion. Okay? This is where we got to add to that cushion of safety, how we're going to maneuver better, all these things. Again, and then when it comes, look, I'm not a stunt driver. When it comes down to sliding on ice, it's a whole other ballgame. And we always tend, including myself, not to do the right thing. Because to do the right thing makes no sense, and I'll get into that in a second. Accelerate, decelerate slower. When it comes down to one thing that I would say about driving in either during weather, any bad weather-related issues, don't use your cruise. Why I'm saying that is, think about this, and I'm jumping ahead. How many of you ever hydroplaned before? I'm gonna say most of us. And what do? I'm going to say 100% of the time, most of us will just, if we're experienced, we're just gonna take our foot off the gas and we're gonna feel the car catch again, correct? But when it comes down to sliding, which in ice, you got the cruise on and all of a sudden we panic and we wanna hit the brake. And what I don't want you is hitting it so hard that all of a sudden you're just going into a tailspin. Because at that point you're SOL. How do we sit there and avoid, again, some things in slowing down? Again, slowing down. So it takes you a little bit longer to get from point A to point B. You get and put yourself in a ditch, or you get into a vehicle accident and get hurt, your night's shot anyway. So these are the things you gotta think about. Or the other part is leave an hour early, and if you get there early, you get there early. Because Murphy's Law is as soon as we get behind, that's when things go in the left field, correct? Going over overpasses, this again happens by our house more than I don't know, probably happens here, but bridges and so forth, overpasses ice up quicker. So there could be no snow on the ground, and all of a sudden, boom, there's black ice. Anybody ever hit that? That you're driving just on a day like this and something happens early in the morning. So these are things you gotta think about. Snow plows, I don't know what plow drivers are around here, but most plow drivers are driving about 40 miles an hour. All of us have probably passed a driver before because we all think, why are you going so slow? I could go faster than you. And you're probably right. And I don't care if you pass it. Remember, they're not paying attention to you. They're going that slow because they're plowing and they're looking at the road. They're not looking at their mirrors. They're not paying attention. And I bet you any money some of us have actually got cut off by them because they just go where they want to go because they're bigger than everybody else. If you're going to sit there and pass something, I don't care what it is, put your big boy pants on and go. Get past it. Don't drive next to that semi-truck for 15 minutes in a snowstorm. Get past it. I don't want you to get in an accident, but if you're going to make that decision, do it, get it done with it. Now, when it comes down to skidding, you got anti-lock brakes, which most vehicles do. You slam on the brakes, your vehicle will start bouncing like this. That's what it's designed to do. Anybody have any cars from the 60s? Still at home? You know, no power steering, no power brakes. You pump those brakes. There's a big difference, okay? They're designed to be different. The other part is, the reason I say it's so hard to sit there and try to control this skid, and I'm not a stunt driver, is because if I start sliding off the road, almost all of us want to turn the steering wheel the opposite way. I don't want to go into that ditch. So mentally, it's hard to sit there and say, turn your wheel into that skid. Very difficult to do. The whole point is like I was going with the hydroplane. You do that because hopefully something catches. Because once you turn your wheels the opposite direction, you're sliding. You're going. If you go in that direction, I'm not going to guarantee you anything won't happen. But hopefully you feel a catch just like your hydroplane, and then maybe you could turn fast enough to get out from there. I'm not going to guarantee you anything, but that's the way you got to do it in the perfect world. How many of you have shovels in your car or emergency equipment in your vehicles? I got a anybody know where West Union, Iowa is? It's in the middle of nowhere. First time I ever went out there, it was fine when I left, but it was a snowstorm by the time I got there. And I'm going all these back farm roads. And I said to myself, and I didn't have it at the time, I said to myself, if I go into the ditch, I'm screwed. Nobody's finding me for a while. From that point on, I got a blanket, I got winter boots in there, I got a lighter, because if it gets that bad, I will light the freaking tire on fire so I can create some black smoke. But I have this in here. Again, did I have it in here before that happened? No. But it's like, I don't want the worst case scenario to happen. So this would be something to think about, to have all this stuff if you're traveling out in the middle of nowhere. Springtime, I'm going to talk about blades. Look, check your blades now, whether personal or your company trucks. They're bad, get them changed. okay? Look, I know windshield wiper blades are expensive, I understand that, and I'm not trying to waste your money. How many of you have ever cleared this much of your window come wintertime? Okay? Or how many of you, it's frozen to the window, and you rip the damn thing off? What do you think rubber's going to do to something solid that's frozen to? Think it's not going to rip or pull chunks out of it? But we sit there and we're in a hurry and we run the windshield wiper fluid. All it does is clear for a second and smears it all ice again, right? But we're going to drive like that anyway. Or you're going to have the one guy doing this like they can see. And what happens with that windshield wiper blade when you get behind somebody and they're throwing slush up or you can't see? Where's that, when that windshield wiper blade's doing this and you really need it, where's that smear at? Right where you can see, right? And what do we do when we're traveling 70 miles an hour and we're trying to get that smear away? Because we, God forbid, we pull over and wipe anything down. What do we do? There you go. Thank you. You roll down the window and try to snap it. Now, sometimes it works. The majority of the time it doesn't. But this is where springtime would be the ideal time to replace them because after a winter, they're probably going to be beat up. But if you get them done now, let Ray know. If there's something wrong with your windshield wiper blade, especially your work trucks, then take care of it. Comes down to, I'm not from Peoria, so I don't know what you have for overpasses, underpasses, viaducts. Do you have areas that have flood that you got to worry about? These are things would be, there's your speed limit. Do I want to go in that area? It doesn't matter. Think about this. The great thing about living in Illinois, we play armchair quarterback a lot. How many of you have ever sat at home watching TV during a hurricane? And these governors get on there, hey, you need to evacuate. We're not coming and rescuing you. And I'm looking at it as, don't rescue. Again, you're out of the gene pool. Okay? The whole point to this, though, is we sit there and think, how many of us watch somebody getting stuck in those flooded waters? We know it's coming, but nobody makes a reaction, and there's always somebody being rescued. And we sit here and play armchair quarterback. And I did the same thing until I realized one day, wait a second, why didn't they leave the road? Maybe they're just stubborn because I don't want to leave because somebody told me so. Just like if I told you not to eat and drive today. 50% of you will go to McDonald's so you could just prove me wrong. Okay? The whole point is there may be a reason why they didn't leave when they left, and that's why they get stuck in the situation they did. But when it comes down to it, if you can avoid getting in flooded water, please do so. And if you're again, it's only going to take 2 inches of water to pick your vehicle up. I don't care how big it is to get it going down the road. And if you're going to hit the water and it's standing, hit it a little bit slower. Okay? You could hydroplane as low as 35 miles an hour. That's another one of my clients. When it comes down to warnings and watches, everything right now is a watch right now. Means it's possible. Warning means the flooding is happening right now. That blizzard is happening right now. That tornado is happening right now. Okay? So these are things if you hear it on the radio, these are things you want to think about. When it comes down to driving through water like this, make sure you always walk under power lines when you're doing that. This is why I take pictures, because I can't make this crap up, guys. So look, and by the way, what's scary? Go online and type in school buses going through flooded waters. These are people driving your kids back and forth from home to school. It's unbelievable. Not to mention the amount of bus drivers blowing through railroad signs. Okay? I can't make this stuff up. Go online and watch this stuff. It's pretty amazing. Okay? The whole point is try to avoid these things. And the last thing, that law, the reason I put that there is because I would love to see that law in every state. That's the actual name of the law. Because when you get outside of Arizona and you get out into the desert, all this stuff starts doing this. And if anybody's ever seen a flash flood, go online and look it up. But it could be raining 100 miles from here, and it's perfectly sunny here, but all of a sudden there, out in the desert, it has nowhere to go. All of a sudden it's going through a small little ravine on your road. Basically what that was, if you decide to go through that flooded water, and you get stuck, the insurance won't cover anything. And you have to pay for the rescue. So again, if you're stupid enough to do it, evidently you got the money to pay for it. Tornadoes, don't try to outrun them. We already talked about watches and warnings. There used to be a tornado season, especially in Illinois, basically March through May, maybe June. Now we're having tornadoes year-round. Mayfield, Kentucky just got what, hit, was it December, a month ago? That was pretty brutal. So these are things that are happening all the time, not just happening during the summer. When it comes down to if you're in a car and you can't outrun it, which you're probably not going to be able to, get out of your vehicle, get in the lowest possible place you can, get in the ditch. It makes no sense. I get that. When we try to outrun things and that thing catches up to you, you've got a gap between the ground and the bottom of your vehicle. That's why they want you to get out of your vehicle. Because the wind's going to get underneath that and pick your truck up, and then you're going to be like that cow in Twister. Okay? The whole point of getting, I'm not going to guarantee you nothing's going to happen, but the whole point of getting yourself and laying on the ground and hanging on to dear life to whatever you can get around, please do so. The other thing is trying to eliminate going and parking under a viaduct. Look, it may sound like it makes sense, but think about when you're driving under an overpass on the highway. Look at what's around there. I'm sure you're going to find one of these that's filled with yellow stuff. There's tires, there's 2x4s, there's bolts and nuts. You think a rock or a pebble this big going at 100 plus miles an hour isn't going to shatter your window? What if it hits you right upside your temple? These are things that I want you to try to avoid. It doesn't happen. Fog, slow down, turn your lights on, do not turn your brakes down. I'm not going to do anything for you besides make it worse. If you have to leave the road, something happens, please pull over as far as physically possible. Do not, like, if I had to pull into that grass and my tires are on that yellow lane in fog, think about, again, how many people are actually paying attention nowadays, and is that going to give them a room enough to get around? Now think about this. This is the scary part. This is where I'm going. We all know what Scott's law is, correct? How many of you see people not still to this day getting into the other lane for the cops or not even slowing down when you're going past them? So what do you think is going to happen if your tire's on that yellow line? If you can't get any far over, please, what I would highly recommend is get out on the passenger side and get away from the vehicle. If somebody hits it, you're out of that vehicle. That's all I can say, and I'm going to tell your kids and your wives, your husbands, or whatever to sit there and do that. Then the last thing, don't take shortcuts. Does anybody have any questions? Any thoughts? Any issues? All right, guys, I don't know where that sign-off sheet is. Is that it right there? If anybody didn't get their name on it, please find it. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week the best you can.